up his cell phone. He said, in the hands of professionals, this is a professional camera. But if you give an amateur a professional camera, it's still an amateur camera. It's the person that's using it, not the equipment. But better equipment gives you less excuses.
So, going back to composition for a second, besides the four-corner rules, what other rules are there?
They have something that we were taught.
Well, I'm sorry, let me back up.
Oh, okay.
Let's define composition first.
The placement of the objects in the viewfinder.
Placements of the object in the viewfinder, okay?
Exactly.
Now let's talk about composition now, how to get the perfect picture. And what others, besides the four corners and the proper light, what other things should we be thinking about?
Where do you place it in the frame? One of the things that I was taught, something I still sometimes use, is you put a line in the viewfinder this way, one this way, and this way, and wherever they intersect is the rule of thirds. Supposedly, if you put the subject in one of those little corners, you've got perfect composition.
Supposedly.
Yes. Any rule there is in photography that I'm aware of can be broken. Just like Photoshop. There's 10 different ways to do the same thing. And all of them work with the same new composition. I used to go to art galleries, and my dad used to take me because he loved art. And we'd go down to the National Gallery, and I would look at the paintings, like even the picture you see here. For this one over here in the corner, you have lines that lead you through the picture. And it's one behind him too. That picture there also has leading lines that lead you through the picture. These are things that also, again, explain where in the hand.
But not as well as we can explain.
For sure.
Because part of the deal about composition is, if it's not striking you as a good angle to shoot on, it's not going to strike your subject or anybody else. So you got to hype yourself up to go, I'm looking for that shot. Which means you also have to move around. There's nothing worse as a photographer to find that one sweet spot and stay there more than 10 shots. I don't care if you got digital or not. Move. Because the more you move, the more you're going to see. If you begin to understand geometry at all, think about buildings and angles. You're looking for a strong angle with your subject, that the background is strong or complementary to your subject, that the depth of field, if it's sharp from in the front of what you're shooting to the back of what you're shooting, it can be very, very fussy. And that's if you have a high f-stop that lets in less light, that makes everything sharp and focused, okay? Of course, to do that, we've got to slow the shutter speed down to have less light in. But the rule of thumb is, whatever millimeter your lens is, your shutter speed can't drop below that. So let's say you have a 35 millimeter lens. In order not to get camera movement, you have to shoot at least 1/35 of a second, okay? If you go down to 2010 and you don't have something to brace yourself on, you're gonna breathe and it's gonna move. The other thing about wonderful photography, you can mess around. You can breathe, and as you get halfway letting your breath out, stay still and just let that finger go. It's power. You know what I mean?
They would come to me asking me, well, how do you do this? How do you do that? And Sharon says when you are shooting, I use a different technique. I use a diffuser, which diffuses the light this way, and also up. So you're getting almost the same thing. But direct flash, again, as I'm shooting outside, when I got strong sunlight, I never use direct flash, same as she does, because it takes away the three-dimensionalism of the photograph. You only get two dimensions, it looks flat. There's no modeling. And people may not even know the difference, but when they see it, they say, well, I like this one more so than this one. And if we can, Sharon and I both, we'll try not to use flash if we can help it. But that's a rare case because light is never the way we want it to be.
You said, Sharon, you said something important that I just wanted to emphasize, that if you are doing an event, you go and scope out the location days before the same time the event is to make sure that you understand the light that you're shooting in, to emphasize the point of how important light is. Anybody else influence you? Gordon Barnes? Anybody else? You, George?
Margaret Burke White, also as being the first woman at Life Magazine in 1946, which was interesting because in those days, women only were allowed to do certain jobs. So she had a lot of things that went on that was trying to hold her back, including her coat flowers. And once she established herself also, everybody knew who she was. I had a guy named Jim Griffin, who was a photographer for the Department of Commerce, who showed me, explained to me that when you're working for corporate people, you have to go in looking like you belong to that company. You're not somebody that's coming in to pull the trash or whatever. And he told me that. He said, if they wear suits, you wear a suit. And which I learned to do. Normally I'd be in a suit tonight, but I ain't working.
All right, I'm gonna get to some questions in the audience, so if you have some, I'm gonna come down and stick a mic in your face. But before I do, I want to talk about post. Now, what is your process? I know that there are so many things that you can do in post. You can, you're editing the photos down, making sure that you present the best shot, but then also there are some techniques too that are, anywhere from Photoshop to, I don't know, whatever other effects you can add and take away and subtract and etc.
Let's say this, post can be fun or a nightmare. If you have not took into account the kind of light you're shooting in, if you shoot tungsten, or if you're shooting a cloudy day, cloudy puts out a lot of blue light. A lot of cameras have a cloudy look indicator on the knob. That's where you want to turn it to, because you want to be able to not be crazy when you do post-production. I'm for not being crazy. I've been there many a time. I hate Photoshop, because if the color's not right, I got to struggle to get it right. And that's what makes my work stand out from other folks' work, okay? Colors is on. Part of what helps colors get on, sometimes you got master. I bought a color checker, because I want to know. And I spend all day at the computer. What a drag that is.
What does that do?
It's called a color checker, and it lets you check what color things ought to be. So if you know what absolute black is in your scene, and you had one of these up when you took a picture, you can adjust for absolute black. I generally use this side to make my custom white balance. It's like a gray card, but it's got a different color on the gray. Makes my colors better. I've seen gray cards that are darker. I've seen all shades of gray. But for me, this works, okay?
White
so
balance,
I take those.
I'm sorry.